In the small, quiet town of Ashford, there stood a Victorian house that had long been the subject of local legends. The old Langley estate, with its tall, arched windows and gabled roof, had been unoccupied for years, its once beautiful façade now marred by peeling paint and creeping ivy. The tale began with the Harringtons, a young couple looking to escape the hustle of city life. Emily and Jack Harrington had found the Langley estate on a whim, charmed by its character and reasonable price. They were unaware of its grim history. The house had been the site of a series of unexplained disappearances in the 1920s, including the tragic vanishing of the Langley family itself. After moving in, Emily and Jack were quickly enamored with the home's antique charm and grand rooms. However, it wasn't long before they began to notice oddities. At first, it was small things, cold spots in certain rooms, creaking floorboards at odd hours, and the feeling of being watched. They dismissed these as quirks of an old house, but the disturbances grew more unsettling. One night, Jack was working late in the study, his only company the soft glow of the desk lamp and the ticking of the grandfather clock. As the clock struck midnight, he heard a faint, melancholy piano melody drifting from the parlor. Jack knew Emily was upstairs asleep, and neither of them played the piano. Intrigued and slightly unnerved, he decided to investigate. He followed the sound to the parlor, but when he opened the door, the music abruptly stopped. The room was empty except for the old piano in the corner. Jack approached the piano, which was covered in a thick layer of dust, and as he reached out to touch it, he felt a sudden chill. A cold breath brushed past his neck, and he turned around to see nothing. That same night, Emily awoke to a dream of a woman dressed in Edwardian morning clothes, wandering through the halls of the house. The woman's face was obscured, but her eyes seemed to plead for help. Emily woke up feeling unsettled, and when she shared the dream with Jack, he grew pale. Determined to get to the bottom of the strange occurrences, they began to research the history of the Langley estate. They learned that the Langley family had mysteriously vanished after the death of their only child, a young girl who had been deeply loved by her parents. The child's piano was said to be her favorite toy, and the family was known to host frequent social gatherings in the parlor. One evening, as the couple reviewed old photographs of the Langley family, Emily noticed a peculiar detail in a portrait of the little girl. She was holding a toy bear that matched one Jack had seen in the attic. Curiosity piqued. Jack went to the attic and found an old trunk. Inside were toys, clothes, and a diary belonging to the missing girl. The diary spoke of her fear of a shadowy figure that visited her at night, growing more frequent and frightening. The final entry was a desperate plea for her parents to save her from the shadow. That night, as they tried to make sense of their findings, the piano began to play again. This time, it wasn't just the melody. It was a full, haunting tune, and it was clear someone was pressing the keys. Emily and Jack, hearts pounding, decided to follow the music. They traced the sound to the cellar, a place they had avoided due to its damp and musty air. The door creaked open, revealing a cold, dark space. As they descended the steps, the music grew louder, more urgent. At the end of the cellar, they discovered a hidden room. Inside, they found old furniture covered in dust and cobwebs, and in the corner, a small, intricately carved wooden box. They opened the box and found it filled with letters and photographs of the Langley family. Among them was a note from the missing girl's father, revealing that the shadowy figure was actually a spirit, a restless soul who had been wronged and was seeking vengeance. The Langley family had been trying to appease the spirit to save their daughter, but their attempts had failed, leaving them trapped in the house forever. Emily and Jack, now deeply troubled, decided to leave the Langley estate and never return. They left behind a note, asking for forgiveness and explaining what they had learned. The house was eventually sold to a new family, but no one lived there for long. The eerie melody of the piano continued to haunt the empty rooms, a reminder of the restless souls who had once called it home. The Langley estate remains abandoned to this day, its walls echoing with the whispers of the past, and the piano's sorrowful tune occasionally floats through the empty halls, a chilling reminder of the haunting that still lingers within its walls. Months after Emily and Jack had vacated the Langley estate, the house fell into disrepair, becoming an overgrown relic of the past. The new owners, the Thompson family, were drawn by its low price and picturesque appearance, not dissuaded by the rumors. They moved in with high hopes of restoring the house to its former glory. The Thompsons were a family of 4, Mark, Sarah, and their 2 teenage children, Lily and Max. From the moment they arrived, they noticed the house had a peculiar atmosphere, an unsettling mix of grandeur and neglect. Mark, an enthusiastic DIY enthusiast, threw himself into restoring the house, while Sarah busied herself with decorating. Lily and Max, initially excited about their new home, were soon put off by the eerie creaks and unexplained drafts. They would hear whispers and see fleeting shadows from the corners of their eyes, but their parents brushed these off as figments of an overactive imagination. One night, after a particularly exhausting day of work, the Thompsons sat down for a family dinner. As they ate, the grandfather clock in the hallway began to chime, but instead of the usual 12 strikes, it rang 13 times. The family exchanged uneasy glances, and Max, trying to lighten the mood, made a joke about ghosts. Later that evening, as Mark was in the attic looking for some old furniture, he stumbled upon the same trunk that Jack and Emily had discovered. Inside were the same toys, clothes, and diary. Mark was intrigued but didn't realize the gravity of what he had found. He brought the trunk down to show Sarah and the kids. Sarah, feeling an unsettling chill as she examined the trunk, came across the diary and began to read it aloud. When she reached the final, desperate plea for help, the temperature in the room dropped significantly. The family's breath became visible, and the shadows in the corners seemed to deepen. At that moment, the piano in the parlor began to play again, but this time the music was different. It was a discordant, jarring melody that seemed to come from nowhere. Lily and Max, both feeling increasingly unnerved, decided to investigate the source of the noise. They followed the sound to the parlor and found the piano's keys moving as if someone invisible was playing. As they watched in horror, the music stopped abruptly, and a cold gust of wind blew through the room, extinguishing the candles and leaving them in darkness. The temperature plummeted, and they heard a soft, mournful sobbing. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. Terrified, Lily and Max ran to find their parents, who were now also feeling the effects of the haunting. Mark tried to reassure them, but his attempts were met with more disturbances. The house seemed to be alive, the walls creaking and groaning, and the whispers grew louder, forming fragmented phrases that hinted at pain and sorrow. Desperate for answers, Sarah decided to investigate the house's history. She visited the local library and spoke with the town's oldest residents, piecing together the story of the Langley estate. What she learned was chilling. The Langley family had not only vanished but had been the victims of a malevolent spirit, a former resident who had died in tragic circumstances and sought to claim more souls. The spirit's rage had been directed at the Langley family, and in its anger, it had cursed the house, trapping anyone who came near it. Sarah returned home with a sense of foreboding, knowing that the Thompsons were now part of a dark legacy. That night, as the family huddled together in the living room, the house seemed to close in around them. The whispers grew louder, and the piano began its discordant tune once more. Sarah and Mark tried to calm their children, but their fear was palpable. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and a figure appeared at the top of the stairs. It was a woman in Edwardian mourning clothes, her face hidden in shadow. She reached out with a ghostly hand, and the temperature in the room dropped even further. The family was frozen in terror as the figure began to descend the stairs, her steps echoing through the house. The sobbing grew louder, and the shadows seemed to reach out, grasping at the Thompsons. Mark, driven by a sudden surge of courage, decided to confront the spirit. He gathered his family and tried to speak to the apparition, asking what it wanted. The ghostly figure stopped at the bottom of the stairs and, in a voice filled with sorrow, whispered, "Help me! Save my child!" The words were barely audible, but they were clear enough to send chills down their spines. The Thompsons were now faced with a choice. They could attempt to help the restless spirit and risk their own safety, or they could flee the house and leave the mystery unsolved. Their decision would determine whether the Langley estate would continue to be a place of sorrow and fear, or if they could bring peace to the tormented souls trapped within its walls. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. The Thompsons, faced with the ghostly apparition's plea, were paralyzed by fear. Mark and Sarah exchanged desperate glances, their minds racing to find a way to help without endangering their family. Lily and Max clung to each other, their eyes wide with terror as the ghostly figure remained stationary, its mournful gaze seeming to pierce through them. "Okay," Mark finally said, his voice trembling but resolute. "We need to help. We can't just leave this unresolved." Sarah nodded, though her heart pounded in her chest. She had done some research at the library, and she recalled an old ritual that might appease a restless spirit. The ritual involved finding something personal to the spirit, a token of its past life, and performing a ceremony to offer it peace. They decided to start by searching the house for any clues about the spirit's identity and its connection to the Langley family. Mark, Sarah, Lily, and Max split up, scouring the rooms for anything that might provide more information. Lily and Max ventured into the attic again, where they had previously found the trunk. This time, they looked more thoroughly and noticed an old, dust-covered mirror leaning against the wall. Behind it was a hidden compartment. Inside, they found a collection of personal items: a locket with a small, faded photograph of the Langley family, a silver brush, and a child's drawing of a house with a sun and a smiling family. Max picked up the locket and carefully opened it. Inside was a tiny portrait of a young girl, her eyes shining with a youthful innocence that was eerily familiar. Lily held up the drawing and looked at the little girl's artwork. It was clear that these items belonged to the missing child. Meanwhile, Sarah and Mark had been combing through the parlor and study, searching for anything else that might reveal more about the spirit's story. They came across a detailed account of the Langley family's last days, a journal kept by the mother, Isabella Langley. The journal described the family's growing fear and the child's frequent nightmares of a shadowy figure that haunted her. As they read through Isabella's entries, Sarah found a passage that described an old family heirloom, a pendant that had been given to the little girl on her birthday. It was said to bring protection and comfort, and it had been lost around the time of the family's disappearance. The pieces began to fall into place. Sarah and Mark realized that the pendant might be the key to helping the spirit find peace. They reconvened with Lily and Max, sharing their findings and deciding to search for the pendant. They searched the house thoroughly, checking every nook and cranny. As they approached the basement, the whispers grew louder, and the cold draft seemed to push them toward the dark, foreboding space. The basement, once avoided, now felt like the heart of the mystery. Inside the basement, they found a small, hidden compartment behind a loose brick in the wall. Inside, they discovered the pendant, its surface gleaming with an ethereal light despite the dust. The moment they touched it, the temperature in the basement seemed to stabilize, and the oppressive atmosphere lightened slightly. With the pendant in hand, they returned to the parlor, where the ghostly figure still stood motionless. Sarah, feeling a mix of hope and trepidation, took the pendant and began the ritual she had read about. She spoke softly to the spirit, explaining that they had found a token of its child and that they wished to help it find peace. As Sarah spoke, the ghostly figure's expression seemed to soften. The mournful sobbing began to fade, replaced by a calming, soothing presence. The cold in the room lessened, and the whispers grew quieter. The figure's form began to waver and blur, as if it were being lifted away by an unseen force. The family watched in awe as the apparition slowly dissipated, leaving behind a feeling of profound relief and tranquility. The house, once oppressive and cold, seemed to exhale a sigh of relief, as if it had finally been freed from its torment. The next morning, the Thompsons found that the house had undergone a subtle transformation. The air felt lighter, and the shadows that had plagued the halls seemed to have retreated. They could still sense the house's history but felt a newfound peace within its walls. Determined to honor the memory of the Langley family, the Thompsons worked to restore the house to its former glory. They preserved the old furnishings and artifacts, creating a small museum to tell the story of the Langley estate and the family's tragic fate. The Langley estate, once a place of fear and sorrow, became a testament to the power of understanding and compassion. The Thompsons lived there for many years, finding comfort and contentment in the house's history and the peace they had helped bring to its restless spirits. The haunting melodies of the piano never returned, but the memory of the Langley family lived on in the stories and the hearts of those who came to visit, a reminder of the thin veil between the past and the present. As the Thompsons settled into their newly restored home, they began to feel a sense of normalcy return. The eerie disturbances that once plagued them had vanished, and the house seemed to embrace its renewed purpose. Yet, a lingering question remained. Had they truly appeased the restless spirits of the Langley family? One crisp autumn evening, as Mark was working in the study and Sarah was preparing dinner, Lily and Max decided to explore the basement once more. Their curiosity had been piqued by the mysterious past of the house, and they wanted to uncover any remaining secrets. They made their way to the basement, which now seemed more like a historical archive than a place of dread. With the pendant safely stored in a display case upstairs, they felt emboldened to investigate further. As they sifted through old boxes and dusty memorabilia, they noticed something strange. A hidden panel in the wall that had escaped their earlier searches. Max found a small latch and, with Lily's help, managed to open the panel. Behind it was a narrow passage leading to a secret chamber. The passage was cramped and dark, but their excitement outweighed their fear. They carefully made their way through, their flashlights revealing old, weathered walls lined with peculiar symbols and faded paintings. At the end of the passage, they found a small, hidden room that seemed untouched by time. In the center of the room was an ornate chest, covered in intricate carvings that depicted scenes of the Langley family's life. The chest was locked, but there was a keyhole, and beside it lay an old key. Lily picked up the key, and her hands trembled with anticipation. She inserted it into the lock and turned it slowly. The chest creaked open to reveal a collection of documents, including detailed records of the Langley family's possessions, a handwritten letter, and a final, desperate plea from Isabella Langley herself. The letter revealed a chilling truth. The Langley family had not only been trying to escape the malevolent spirit, but had also been attempting to protect a hidden treasure. The spirit, a former resident who had been wronged by the town, sought to claim the treasure as its own, which had led to the family's tragic fate. The treasure, according to the letter, was hidden beneath the house, within a secret chamber that only revealed itself under certain conditions. Isabella's final wish was for someone to find the treasure and use it to right the wrongs done to her family. Excited and alarmed by this revelation, Lily and Max rushed to tell their parents. Mark and Sarah were initially skeptical but soon realized the gravity of the situation. They decided to search for the hidden chamber, using the clues from Isabella's letter. They gathered their tools and began a meticulous search of the house, focusing on the symbols and markings they had seen in the secret passage. Their efforts led them to the study, where they noticed that one of the bookcases had a hidden mechanism. With a mixture of hope and anxiety, they activated the mechanism, and the bookcase slid open to reveal a hidden staircase leading down into the earth. With the family united, they descended into the darkness. The staircase led to an underground chamber filled with ancient artifacts, including ornate jewelry, gold coins, and a beautifully crafted wooden box. At the center of the chamber was a pedestal with an inscription that matched the symbols they had seen earlier. The inscription read, "To restore peace, the treasure must be given to those wronged, and the wrongdoers' debts must be paid." The Thompsons realized that to truly honor the Langley family, they needed to use the treasure to address the injustices that had led to the family's demise. They took the treasure to local authorities and historical societies, revealing the story of the Langley estate and the injustices of the past. The treasure was used to fund the restoration of historical records, build a memorial for the Langley family, and support the descendants of those wronged by the spirit's actions. With these actions, the legacy of the Langley family was honored, and the malevolent spirit that had plagued the house was finally laid to rest. The estate, now a symbol of reconciliation and justice, became a place of historical significance and education. The Thompsons lived in the Langley estate for many more years, their lives intertwined with the house's rich history. They often shared the story of the Langley family with visitors, ensuring that the past was remembered and the lessons learned. The house, once a place of fear and sorrow, had become a testament to the power of truth and compassion, proving that even the darkest mysteries could be resolved through understanding and empathy. And so, the Langley estate stood as a beacon of hope in history, its once restless spirits finally at peace. Their story a reminder of the enduring quest for justice and redemption. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.